Number 8. The Titanic today. Ever since the rediscovery of the RMS Titanic wreck in 1985, experts have entertained the possibility of bringing it back up to the surface several times. But many don't believe it's even possible because of how deteriorated the vessel is, and raising the wreck would also be ethically questionable since it would involve disturbing the final resting place of over 1,500 people. The ship's condition has worsened considerably since its discovery, making the prospect of raising it to the surface less and less likely. But there's still a lot to learn from the decaying wreck, which can maybe help to answer some lingering questions about the tragedy. In 2017, author Shannon Maloney proposed that a fire in the ship's engine room had started before the Titanic even set sail. He believes that workers fought the blaze during the maiden voyage, but that it ultimately weakened the ship's hull, putting the vessel at a disadvantage before it hit an iceberg. Maloney has uncovered strong evidence pointing toward this possibility, including a photograph featuring a mysterious 30-foot-long streak on the hull. Engineers said that a fire in one of the coal bunkers could have caused the streak, possibly weakening the ship's steel frame by as much as 75%. It's unknown whether the wreck bears any evidence of this. A closer look could perhaps bring experts one step closer to finding out, but if they're going to investigate, they should probably do it soon. What's left of the Titanic is rapidly deteriorating, and anything that isn't brought to the surface somewhat soon will likely be lost to history, taking any remaining secrets it has with it. This is probably the most rational of several proposed alternative theories about what caused the Titanic to sink, ranging from the eccentric to the downright ridiculous. Some have suggested that the ship was struck by a torpedo, which sounds a bit unrealistic until you hear some of the other ideas people have come up with, including that the Titanic was victimized by an Egyptian mummy's curse. Number 7. A mammoth tusk. Scientists from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were shocked in 2019 when they noticed what looked like a mammoth tusk at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The team was navigating a remotely operated vehicle along the seafloor off the California coast when they spotted the out-of-place object sitting 10,000 feet below the water's surface, and they were 185 miles from land, begging the question of how the 3-foot-long tusk got there in the first place. They retrieved the artifact and confirmed that it belonged to an extinct Columbian mammoth that died around 100,000 years ago. A mammoth tusk this old is an extremely rare find on land, but discovering one in the ocean was unheard of until now. Marine biologist Stephen Haddock told Gizmodo that he was shocked it hadn't been destroyed or buried at some point in time. The tusk is extremely well preserved, owing to the cold, high-pressure conditions along the ocean floor. In fact, it might be the most intact mammoth tusk from the region of North America that it was found in. Scientists plan to perform CT scans and attempt to extract DNA from the artifact in hopes of learning more about mammoth lineages. Columbian mammoths were hybrids of 2 different species, but researchers have yet to determine their origins in detail, including when the hybridization event occurred. Number 6. Water Witch Shipwreck. Sometimes it's not the actual discovery, but the process of looking for an artifact or ruin that makes it so mysterious. Take, for example, the Water Witch, a steamship that disappeared on November 11, 1863, shortly before the American Civil War ended. It got caught up in a brutal storm in Lake Huron's Saginaw Bay and plunged 230 feet to the bottom of the lake, taking its entire crew of 17 to 22 men down with it. Shipwreck hunters have been searching for it for over 50 years with no luck until this year, when 79-year-old David Trotter finally located it. Trotter is one of Michigan's most successful ship hunters. Throughout his career, he's found over 100 missing vessels. He told local station WZZM that he spent 40 years looking for the Water Witch, with his interest in the wreck peaking after the discovery of its sister ship, the City of Detroit, in 1998. The City of Detroit also sank in Saginaw Bay, and both it and the Water Witch were captained by a pair of brothers named George and Redmond Ryder. After finding the City of Detroit, Trotter thought it would be easy to locate the Water Witch, but the search continued for another 23 years while he and his team scoured a 2,500 square mile area of the lake bed. Finally, Trotter spotted an undiscovered wreck. A dive team was dispatched to the site in June. They spent less than a half hour capturing footage of the sunken ship from end to end, hoping to catch evidence of a smoking gun that would lead to its identification. The divers also estimated that the ship was 170 to 180 feet long, which kept it in the running for possibly being the Water Witch. Trotter and his team compared the features of the wreck with records of the vessel and found that they matched up. It was apparent that they had completed the number one thing on Trotter's checklist: finding the Water Witch. The discovery revealed that it sank just 15 miles from the city of Detroit, despite the ships sinking a decade apart from one another. For now, Trotter is keeping the wreck's exact location a secret, but he said he plans to eventually share it with the public. Where do you think the Water Witch is located? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. The Stele of Thonis Heracleon. Around 440 BC, the Greek writer Herodotus described a coastal city that became known in later texts as Heracleon. Experts spent decades searching for it underwater until French archaeologist Frank Gaudiot finally discovered it off Egypt's northern coast in 2000 in Abu Qir Bay. Among the ruins, Gaudiot's team found a large stone containing inscriptions about a town called Thonis. Before then, researchers had widely believed that Thonis and Heracleon were two different places, but the hieroglyphics proved that they were one place that went by two names. To the Greeks, it was Heracleon, while the Egyptians called it Thonis. Pharaoh Nectanebo I commissioned the stele of Thonis Heracleon sometime during his reign, which lasted from 378 to 362 BC. A nearby identical stone was found at the ancient city of Naucratis, with the only difference being the column in which the location's name was carved. The tablet's decree states that 10% of all taxes from local productions and imports must go toward a temple in the eastern Nile Delta of Lower Egypt dedicated to the Egyptian deity Neith. Divers at Thonis Heracleon also found a nearly 18-foot tall, 6.6-ton red granite statue of Hapi, a divine personification of Nile floods. Dating back to the 4th century BC, it's the largest known Hapi statue ever found. Thonis Heracleon experienced an earthquake during the 2nd century BC that liquefied the ground beneath it, causing the city to sink into the sea. And until its relatively recent discovery, experts were stuck wondering if it was a purely mythical place. Number 4. Aboriginal settlements. Humans first arrived in Australia around 65,000 years ago when sea levels were much lower than they are today. As the climate cooled and the planet entered its most recent ice age, these levels fell even more. When the ice age peaked around 20,000 years ago, sea levels were around 427 feet lower than they are now. Coastlines extended much further than they do in modern times. Between 18,000 and 8,000 years ago, global temperatures began to rise, causing the ocean to swallow up dry land along with ancient coastal settlements that sat along the shore. While working off the coast of northwestern Australia last year, archaeologists discovered the first known examples of submerged Aboriginal settlements. The two sites had slowly sunk into the ocean toward the end of the last ice age. One settlement, located off the Dampier archipelago, contains hundreds of stone tools, which were found just 8 feet below the water's surface. The other site sits 46 feet underwater. It yielded at least one stone cutting tool made from locally sourced materials. Radiocarbon dating revealed that both settlements are at least 7,000 years old. The people who lived at these sites established them along the coast after traveling to Australia by boat from what is now Indonesia. Scientists believe that there are more submerged Aboriginal settlements waiting to be discovered, and that studying them will help solve unanswered questions about the movement and history of prehistoric humans. Number 3. Battersea Shield. In 1857, workers dredged up an ancient bronze shield from the Thames River in London while excavating ahead of the construction of the historic Chelsea Bridge. It's made from several pieces that are held together by rivets and is decorated in the style of the Celtic Latin culture. Known as the Battersea Shield, the object would have been used as a covering for a wooden shield. It's considered one of the most significant pieces of Celtic art ever discovered in Britain. But its origins are a mystery. For one, nobody can say with certainty when the shield was made or used. The Museum of London dated it to sometime between 350 and 50 BC, but experts think that it may have been made during the early 1st century AD. The workers who discovered the Battersea Shield also found skeletons, as well as large amounts of Roman and Celtic weapons. Consequently, some historians theorize that the shield was left behind during Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain in 54 BC. But most modern scholars challenge this view. The bronze plating that the shield is made with is too thin to have protected someone during combat, and it contains no sign of battle-related damage. So it's likely that the Battersea Shield was created as a way for someone to show off their social status or as a parade piece, and then was deposited into the river as a religious offering. Most researchers who agree with this also think that the shield predates Caesar's invasion in 54 BC. Interestingly, the artifact features swastika-like symbols which, in today's world, represents hatred and bigotry. At the time the shield was created, however, it represented good luck and solar energy. In the ancient world, the symbol wasn't called a swastika, but was known as the whirling sun. Number 2. Port of AMATHUS. The Port of AMATHUS was an artificial harbor that was likely built during the 3rd or 4th century BC near the modern-day city of Limassol in what is now Cyprus. Experts described it as an impressive but short-lived large public port project of the Hellenistic period, which may never have been completed. It contains 3 piers made from large rectangular stones, which protected ships from strong winds. Today, the ancient port's outer harbor sits 13 feet underwater and extends 328 feet from the shore. Sadly, it appears as though the site was never used for its intended purpose. The area was abandoned entirely by the 6th century, most likely due to Arab raids, although archaeologists admittedly don't know for sure why the population of AMATHUS fled. A team led by Dr. Jean-Yves Ampro first excavated the submerged site during the 1980s. In 2005, an artificial reef was established among the ruins. It has unfortunately caused a lot of stress to the structures. Now, officials want to turn the site into an underwater park. This plan is causing tensions between people who want to preserve the harbor and those who are more concerned with protecting a marine plant called Neptune grass. Authorities are pushing forward with the plans and have promised the public that they will protect both the submerged rooms and the Neptune grass, which is vital to aquatic ecosystems in the Mediterranean. Number 1. Ancient Canoe. While testing underwater scooters with a friend in Lake Mendota in Madison, Wisconsin, maritime archaeologist Tamara Thompson spotted what they initially thought was a log, but they realized that it was unlikely for a log to be resting at the bottom of the lake and decided to take a closer look with some colleagues. The 15-foot long wooden object turned out to be a 1,200-year-old dugout canoe. It bears the distinction of being the oldest untouched and intact boat ever found in Wisconsin. The team recently recovered the canoe from beneath 27 feet of water, bringing it in contact with the air for the first time since around 800 AD. It may have been carved by people from the Ho-Chunk Native American tribe that has historically lived in the region. In the absence of modern-day tools, they would have burned a tree trunk and hollowed it out with stone tools, a painstaking process that state archaeologist Jim Skibo said would have taken hundreds of hours and a great deal of skill. Now that it's been exposed to air and light after sitting in the cold, dark water for over a millennium, the team is working diligently to preserve the canoe before it deteriorates. The process will take several years, after which the canoe will probably go on a display at a state history museum.
Number 10. Hidden Rainforest. When you think of Antarctica, what is the first thing that strikes your mind? Mountainous glaciers, frozen lakes and waterfalls, numbing sub-zero temperatures. In short, Antarctica is inhabitable. What if we told you that Antarctica was once home to several species of animals? Of course, apart from the penguins and polar bears that we find today. Don't believe us? Let's go back to a time when Antarctica had a humid climate and temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, about 90 million years ago. The rainforest discovery happened in 2017 when a group of international researchers found core sediment under the layer of ice in Pine Island, West Antarctica. The research team was baffled to find sediments of a different color. When they had the samples tested, they found fossilized traces of several types of pollen, spores, and even fossilized roots, which signify a once thriving temperate rainforest at the extreme pole of the Earth. There is no doubt that during the Cretaceous period, which dates to around 140 million to 60 million years ago, the dinosaurs were the kings of the Earth, and the sea level was at least 558 feet, 170 meters, higher than what it is today. Antarctica's weather had been pleasant and likely as high as 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius. The temperatures in summer would be around 66 degrees Fahrenheit, 19 degrees Celsius, and the water temperature would have been roughly 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius. The world has been talking about the radically changing climate and emission of greenhouse gases, and how important it is to keep that in check. If things continue as they are, it won't be long before Antarctica's rainforests could spring back to life. But we, the human race, would cease to live. Number 9. Lost tunic. Do you think that tunics came into fashion in the 20th century? What if we tell you that scientists found a tunic that belongs to the Iron Age, both well preserved and hidden away below layers and layers of ice? What's even more fascinating wasn't just the tunic they found. In August 2011, when scientists were digging through the ice sites at Opland Lindbreed, they found a bundled up piece of fabric and didn't think much of it. It could have been from some hiker or just have belonged to victims of an avalanche. They, however, carefully bundled it up and had it transported to a nearby lab. On unwrapping the fabric, they discovered that it was a completely intact tunic. A radiocarbon dating analysis stated that the tunic was at least 1700 years old. Considering the area where it was found, it is regarded as a pretty rare find. During the same year, scientists also found a mitten not too far from where they had found the tunic. They assumed both the pieces of textile might have had some connection, but to their surprise, the mitten belonged to another era, dating back to the age of the Vikings, 1100 years ago. Excavations continued, and around 70 fragments of clothing were found, whose definite purpose could not be established. It wasn't just tailoring skills. People belonging to this age also had commendable shoemaking skills. Several discarded shoes made of untanned hide were also found scattered amidst the ice. The unique feature of these shoes is in the fact that the hair side of the hide was stitched towards the outsides of the shoes. Although it wouldn't look appealing, it served the purpose of providing grip during difficult snow crossings. The oldest hide shoe which was found intact in one piece belonged to the period 1000 AD. Number 8. Treasure found in ice. While you are hiking up an icy glacier, you'd be unlikely to stumble over a treasure chest unless you're playing Minecraft. But for one French climber, luck was on his side. In 2013, a French climber who wished to remain anonymous was climbing up Mont Blanc, Bostonos Glacier, when he stumbled upon a treasure chest full of sapphires, emeralds, and rubies. This wasn't just any find. The value of the items discovered was estimated to be $332,000. The climber reported to the local newspaper that he found an etching that said, "Made in India," when he opened the chest. Being an ideal citizen, he reported his find to the police and handed over the treasure to the authorities. After further research, they discovered that the loot was linked to plane crashes associated with 2 Indian airlines. The first one occurred in 1950, where on November 13, a flight carrying the Malabar Princess had crashed and took the lives of 58 people. Similarly, 16 years later, on January 24, 1966, an Air India flight carrying passengers from Mumbai to New York crashed, killing all the 117 passengers. The French have duly notified the Indian authorities. However, if the treasure remains unclaimed, according to the French law, the ownership of the find would automatically go to the climber. Although this discovery is quite rare, it is not the only thing that has been found scattered around the Mont Blanc Glacier. There have been several such reports made in the past few years alone. Number 7. Atl Dart. Imagine walking through an ice patch and you see a branch that's fallen off a tree, caught in a bush. You wouldn't think much of it, right? It was only on closer inspection that the supposed branch turned out to be an ancient weapon that belonged to the Paleo-Indians called an Atl Dart. In 2010, Craig Lee discovered this 10,000-year-old artifact frozen in ice near Yellowstone National Park. The dart was first designed to be straight, but since it has remained frozen for centuries, it now has a slight bend towards one side. The dart was made out of birch saplings, and the best part is that it still had the personal markings of the Indian hunter it belonged to. The 3-foot, 0.9-meter dart had a projectile point at one tip, and a dimple which helped hook the dart onto the throwing tool called atol. The atol is said to be 2 feet, 0.6 meters long, and helps with leverage to gain greater velocity for the strike. When Mr. Lee discovered the dart, it was slightly bent, which he concluded could be because of an avalanche, or a large animal, like that of a big horned sheep's hoof, accidentally stomping on the buried weapon. Lee was able to identify and report this ancient find only because he is a specialist in a very uncommon emerging field which is called ice patch archaeology. Number 6. Fish lizard skeleton. There are fish and there are lizards, but what if we told you that there was a time when planet Earth was home to a reptile which appeared to look like a fish, but was actually a lizard? In 2014, these fish lizard skeletons were first discovered in Chile. And no, it was not the only one of these unusual creatures to be found. After excavating the remains of this particular skeleton, scientists have found 46 more specimens of these skeletons that belonged to 3 different species. The fish lizards, also known as Ichthyosaurus, are known to have been fast swimmers that lived during the Mesozoic era, which was 250 million to 90 million years ago. Their bodies were shaped like torpedoes, with vertical flippers, long snouts, and gnawing teeth. One cannot miss the resemblance to dolphins. The scientists had discovered both embryos and adult specimens. The largest fossil was 16 feet, 5 meters long, and some of them also had well-preserved soft tissues. Research shows that the species might have gone extinct due to mudslides from volcanic eruptions, which pushed them into the sediment layers of the seabed and thereafter under sheets of ice. The Chilean glacier might have been home to these reptiles who swam the oceans, while the dinosaurs walked the earth. Isn't it amazing how ice can preserve even soft tissues for thousands and thousands of years? If you are enjoying this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons for more videos like these. Number 5. Woolly rhino. Talking of well-preserved ancient finds, this next specimen seems to beat it all. It's not a fabric or a reptile, but a huge animal, the rhino. Scientists in Siberia found this particular animal along the banks of the Tyrketyak River. They believe that the rhino might have been 2 to 3 years old at the time it died from drowning. The carcass of the mammal dates back to 20,000 to 50,000 years ago and was discovered in 2014 in the melting ice of the diamond-producing region of Yakutia, Russia. After a few millennia, you would expect specimens to be half decayed to the extent of barely being able to identify the species. But unusually, this was one of the best preserved specimens from the Ice Age. It has most of its limbs, organs, tusks, and even layers of fat, which are still well preserved. Although the specimen didn't entirely escape being decayed as it seems, some erosion marks can be found on its tusks. But hey, don't forget how old this guy is. Millions of years ago, these woolly rhinos lived throughout Europe and Asia. They had 2 horns, both a small one between the eyes and a large one which stuck out upwards. They were primarily herbivores, and adults grew to almost 13 feet, 3.96 meters, and weighed 4,400 pounds, 1,995 kilograms. As the Earth's temperature rises, the melting ice sheets are likely going to reveal many more secrets from the past. A similar discovery was made the same year when another baby woolly rhino was found around the same area. Researchers have named her Sasha. Sasha was 34,000 years old when found and had strawberry blonde fur. The baby rhino died at the age of 7 months and has 2 little horns, just like the adult rhino discovered. Number 4. Lyuba, the baby mammoth. Let's go back 400,000 years ago to a time when mammoths roamed the earth. These huge mammals were almost the same size as an elephant, but were covered in fur to suit the climatic conditions of the Ice Age. In 2007, Yuri Kahudi, a Nanette reindeer herder, discovered this baby mammoth in the Yamal Peninsula of the Arctic. When the 41,800-year-old carcass was found, it weighed 110 pounds, 50 kilograms, and was found to have died when it was a mere 30 to 35 days old. The Nanettes believed that touching the mammoth carcass would bring bad luck. However, they did inform the local museum director. Kuti was given the honor of bestowing the calf with a name. He named it Lyuba, after his wife. Little Lyuba was well preserved, from her eyes to her trunk and the fur all over her body. She has a slender trunk that helped her to drink water from the snow, and a layer of fat that helped her to keep warm during the harsh winters. The mammoth was sent to Japan to get computer scans and tested for research purposes. The results determined that Lyuba probably became extinct after she choked on some mud while trying to cross the riverbed and follow the head of the clan. Researchers were surprised that she was in such good condition. After running tests, they even found traces of her mother's milk in her stomach and fecal matter in her intestines. It's thanks in large part to lactic acid bacteria that helped preserve her to find out more about the species. Currently, the calf is preserved at the Shimanovsky Museum and Exhibition Center in Salekhard, Russia. She currently weighs 110 pounds, 49.8 kilograms, and is 3 feet tall, 0.9 meters, about the same size as a large dog. Even though she had a tragic end, she is today helping scientists in discovering the truth of the Ice Age, thousands and thousands of years later. Number 3. Ice mummies. You probably heard of Egyptian mummies, but have you ever heard of ice mummies? Meet Ötzi, the ice mummy. He was found in 1991 near the Tyrolean Alps, and from then on, he became famous all over the world. He is currently on display in the Bolzano Museum, and nearly 250,000 people come to visit him every year. So, have you ever wondered why ice mummies are so rare? When Ötzi was discovered, he wasn't in the best condition, but thanks to a group of scientists, he was restored. Back then, people did not know that ice could help preserve artifacts and mummies. Due to this, loads of artifacts were destroyed in the process. So we were lucky enough to find Ötzi because this is indeed a rare find. To become an ice mummy, the person would have to firstly die on ice, not to be found by any relatives or scavengers, freeze to perfection, and then be buried under sheets of ice that don't move. It's only when all these conditions are satisfied, we get one completely well-preserved ice mummy. The closest we have ever found to Ötzi was a Viking sword, which was found in 2017. The sword likely belonged to a Viking soldier who lost his way in the blizzard. A few other ice mummies have been found scattered around British Columbia, but Ötzi takes the prize for being the most well-preserved of them all. Number 2. 25-million-year-old lake. Do you know there is a lake which is not frozen but is still preserved under a layer of ice? Lake Vostok is the largest lake in Antarctica among 400 other known subglacial lakes in the region. You can find this lake at the southern pole of Russia's Vostok Station, under the Central East Antarctic ice sheet, which is 11,444 feet above sea level. The ice that is settled on the lake has a continuous paleoclimatic record of 400,000 years. But the strange thing is that the lake has only been isolated for 15 to 25 million years. On February 5, 2012, Russian scientists were able to complete the longest ever ice core drilling of about 3,768 meters, 2,400 feet, which led them to the surface of the lake. Pristine waters from the buried lake sprung up, indicating that the lake is still very much in its liquid state. The aim of doing this experiment is to collect samples of the water and its sediments to prove that there are other life forms that could be found in these ancient lake waters. Number 1. Fleet of frozen ships. Frozen ships are not rare, but finding a whole fleet of them left abandoned to bear all the natural calamities for decades is something that piques our interest. Bechavinka is today otherwise called the Ghost Town, or the graveyard of wrecked ships. It was once the Soviet and Russian naval base and was located at a small portion of the Kamchatka Peninsula, known as the Land of Fire and Ice. This region gained its peculiar name because of the presence of active volcanoes amidst towering glaciers. It was first established in the 1960s by submarines of the Soviet Pacific Fleet. Since 1996, the site has been left abandoned. Several ships and boats of varied sizes can be seen in different stages of degradation, some floating, some partially submerged, rusted, and wrecked in the icy frozen waters of the Arctic. The eerie appearance has garnered the attention of several tourists, and today, Bechavinka has become a tourist hotspot. It was even featured in Robert Greenville's 2019 Abandoned Cold War Places.
Number 10. Shag Harbor. Shag Harbor is a small place located in the southern part of Nova Scotia, Canada. It's a tiny fishing village that's only claim to fame came on October 4, 1967, when reports were investigated of a mysterious UFO incident. Something strange was witnessed at 12,000 feet, 3,657 meters, when an Air Canada first officer named Robert Ralph saw something strange on the left side of the aircraft. The object was lit up brightly, it looked rectangular, and it had small lights trailing it. A few minutes later, there was a great explosion. A blue cloud enveloped the object, and it was gone. At the same time, people were reporting a glowing object in the sky in Halifax. It was about an hour later that the people of Shag Harbor witnessed an unidentified flying object cruising through the sky and then crashing into the waters just in front of their little village. A small group of locals reportedly discovered a glowing object that they thought was a crashed airplane about 800 feet, 243 meters offshore. They contacted the police, who sent rescue efforts to look for survivors, but the glowing wreckage disappeared and was never discovered. It also turned out that there had been no aircraft missing from the area, meaning there was no possible way that whatever crashed into the harbor could have been an airplane. This was taken so seriously that the Canadian Navy showed up and combed the bottom of Shag Harbor for 3 days. According to the officers, however, they never found any trace of any mysterious glowing object. Number 9. Zimbabwe alien landing. In Zimbabwe on September 16, 1994, one of the most bizarre UF sightings ever reported went down. It was just outside the small town of Rua at a school of all places. There were 62 students studying at the aerial school, all aged between 6 and 12. The children say they saw a silver craft come out of the sky and land on a field nearby. They then witnessed several creatures dressed in black leaving the ship. These unknown creatures communicated with the children telepathically. They left messages in their minds that the planet was in serious trouble and that if environmental action wasn't taken soon, all hope would be lost for humanity. They basically warned a bunch of school children that we all need to start taking better care of our planet or we're going to die. This is still the most famous UFO case in African history. Africa isn't generally considered a UFO hotspot, and yet in the days prior to the incident, there had been quite a few UFO sightings all throughout southern Africa. People also witnessed fireballs passing through the sky during the night. And to make this even more convincing, many of the students to this day adamantly stick to their story that they did see aliens and received the telepathic warning. Number 8. Travis Walton. Travis Walton was allegedly abducted by an alien on November 5, 1975. At the time, he was working for the American forestry industry. He was in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forests in Arizona when he went missing for approximately 5 days and 6 hours. This is not debatable. Travis really did go missing and was unable to be found even when search dogs and helicopters went after him. He reappeared suddenly on the side of the road near the small town of Heber, also in Arizona. He received a significant amount of publicity when it came out that the reason he was missing was that he reported he had been taken up to an alien spaceship. Travis claimed that a giant saucer-like object hovered about 110 feet, 33.5 meters away from him off the ground, buzzing very loudly. He approached the object, a beam of light appeared, and he was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he was in what appeared to be a hospital. There were short creatures surrounding him that definitely weren't from Earth, as well as ordinary humans. He remembered something being placed over his face, some kind of respiratory device, and that was all he was aware of for 5 days, until his reappearance roadside. Number 7. Donut UFO. On November 8, 2021, a photographer in Zurich, Switzerland pointed his camera up at the night sky and took a few pictures. He was photographing what appeared in the images to be a donut-like UFO, a bluish orb of light in the sky that looked like the breakfast treat due to its composition of concentric circles. At the time, he thought he was photographing SpaceX's Endeavour capsule, which was scheduled to return to Earth that exact night. However, the SpaceX capsule landed in the Gulf of Mexico over 5,000 miles from Zurich. There's no way that his blue donut UFO was the SpaceX capsule. So what was it? That seems to be the big mystery right now. It could have been a fuzzy picture of a very distant star, it could have been a chance encounter with a fast-moving UFO, or it could be something we have yet to discover. The mystery remains. Number 6. Roswell. The most famous UFO encounter in the history of humanity appeared in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico. U.S. Army Air Forces said in a press release that they had recovered a mysterious flying disc from a Roswell ranch. It was actually the rancher who found it, W.W. Mac Brazel, and it wasn't exactly in Roswell, but 75 miles away in Lincoln County. When the farmer found the wreckage, he immediately brought some material to the local sheriff, who then brought it to the attention of the local Army colonel. The next day, rumors were already going crazy. There was a statement released by the Roswell Army Airfield that said a mysterious disc had come into their possession. But here's why Roswell got so famous. The government immediately changed their story, then they kept on changing it over and over again. For anyone paying attention, it seemed as though they were just scrambling to cover something up. After the Army said they found a flying saucer, they changed their story to a weather balloon, and then in 1994, just about 50 years later, they admitted that the weather balloon story had been a lie. They instead claimed that the wreckage was from a spy device which was supposed to be floating over the USSR to take pictures. If you're wondering about the supposed alien bodies that were removed from the site, the Army finally admitted in 1997 that these were actually parachute test dummies. None of this obviously makes any sense. The ever-changing story makes sifting the truth from the lies especially difficult. The worst part is that we just don't know whether aliens really did crash in the New Mexico desert, or if it was just a bizarre military spy machine. What do you think happened in Roswell? Let me know any of your theories in the comments, and don't be afraid to sound a little bit crazy. And before the end of the video, don't forget to hit subscribe for more great content. Number 5. Delta Airlines sighting. In early 2020, an unidentified flying object was spotted over the Canadian province of Saskatchewan by a pilot traveling in from Fairbanks, Alaska. The incident was filed with Transport Canada's Civil Aviation Daily Occurrence Reporting System. The pilot with Delta Airlines witnessed something that they couldn't identify directly above them, moving from the right to the left. It couldn't have possibly been another airplane because the pilot was already cruising at 39,000 feet, 11,887 meters. And when the pilot inquired about the mysterious object, air traffic control said that there was no known traffic in the area. At this point, nobody knew what the strange object was or even if the pilot had seen anything at all. But according to UFO expert Chris Ratowski, the fact that it was a real pilot who reported the incident means a lot. These people spend a significant amount of time in the sky and would never report a UFO unless they really thought they saw something. While we don't know for sure if this was an alien in the middle of absolute nowhere in northern Canada, it definitely could have been. Number 4. Hollow ship. According to a legend, a mysterious vessel drifted in from the ocean to land on the coast of Japan back in 1803. From the strange vessel, a beautiful woman emerged. She was wearing peculiar clothing that no one had ever before seen, and she was carrying a box under her arm. She couldn't communicate with the locals because she spoke an unknown language. Even her craft was marked with strange scribblings that no one could understand. The ship became known as the Utsurobuna, which translates to hollow ship. And believe it or not, there are actually quite a few historical records of this incident in what is today the Ibaraki Prefecture. What makes this story really unique is that there are over 11 historical accounts of the Utsurobuna coming to shore in 1803. There are plenty of outrageous legends in Japanese folklore, but none of them are put forward as real events that truly happened on specific dates. Something definitely happened in 1803 to inspire so many stories of the beautiful woman and her ship. But whether it was a Russian whaling vessel that washed ashore or an alien spaceship, we'll probably never know. Number 3. Orb over Mexico. Shocking new footage has just been released of a glowing orb spotted over Mexico. The orb was shaped kind of like a teardrop, and it was seen by a pair of pilots for FedEx on March 19, 2020. The FedEx pilots were flying near the city of Monterrey when they witnessed the glowing orb hovering above their windshield. What the pilots couldn't understand was why the orb didn't appear on their radar. At one point, the glowing orb descended rapidly from the sky and then matched the altitude of the cargo planes. It flashed a beam of light in their direction. The orb zoomed alongside them for 30 minutes, and then it vanished in a flare of purple light. Keep in mind that this really did happen. The footage of the amazing encounter has since been analyzed by experts with the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena. They have a database going all the way back to 1916 comprising all information about UFO encounters. And these guys say this one is pretty legit. Both the pilots who witnessed the orb can claim 30 years of experience in the private sector and the US Air Force. They have no reason to lie or to sacrifice their integrity to report such a shocking UFO sighting. Number 2. The Nuremberg sighting. The most ancient UFO sighting that we're going to talk about today came from 1561 in Nuremberg, Germany. It was April 14th when several residents claimed they saw not only orbs glowing in the sky, but cylinders, rods, and all kinds of other bizarre objects just as the sun was rising. The objects apparently flew across the face of the sun as if there was some kind of celestial battle happening. And apparently the townspeople saw a huge black triangular object nearly blot out the sun just before they heard a crash from beyond the city. How do we know this event actually took place? Historians know it because a professional painter named Hans Glaser produced a piece of artwork based on the event and left behind a written description. But what actually happened might be a little easier to explain than a celestial battle. Scientists say it could have been the phenomenon known as sundogs. This is when light passes through ice crystals to create strange shapes directly in front of the sun. For those who have never seen the phenomenon before, it might look like a space battle with lots of orbs and triangles. But then again, the people of Nuremberg may really have witnessed a host of UFOs passing through our solar system. We just have no way of knowing. Number 1. Barney and Betty Hill. Betty and Barney Hill defined a generation of UFO believers. They claim to have been abducted by extraterrestrials while traveling through New Hampshire in 1961. The Roswell crash happened 20 years before, but this was the first widely discussed alien abduction in the US. It actually became known as the Hill abduction. It was adapted into a book, it became a movie, and people are still talking about it today. Here's what happened according to Betty and Barney. They were driving to Portsmouth from Niagara Falls when something appeared across the face of the moon. It looked like an airplane, yet it was glowing and weirdly colorful. They realized it wasn't an airplane pretty quickly, especially since it seemed to be coming right for them. The object passed over a signal tower at the top of Cannon Mountain. It didn't make a sound, and then it lowered itself directly above their vehicle. Barney exclaimed, "They're gonna capture us," and tried to drive away at high speed. Both of them heard a bunch of beeping and buzzing sounds, the car vibrated, and all of a sudden they had traveled 35 miles with absolutely no memory of what happened. They never claimed to be poked or prodded by alien instruments. The Hills simply said that they saw the UFO, they missed a whole bunch of time when they blacked out, and their car was damaged from something unknown. Plus, for years after, Betty was plagued by horrible nightmares. Have you ever experienced an encounter of the third kind? Let me know in the comments, and don't skimp on the details. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.